Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Join the podcast mogul Phil Better as he interviews successful entrepreneurs that make their living in the digital world. Now, let's join your host, Phil Better, and his special guest today on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast.
Welcome back, inspired entrepreneurs, to another episode of Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. I am, of course, your host with the most, Phil Better, and I am truly excited to have Sylvania Harrod here. Thank you so much for being here, sir.
Pleasure to be here, my friend.
Did I mess up your name at all? Because
it's all good. It's Sylvania Harrod, but I've been called worse. The unique thing that happens when you have a unique name like mine is back in the day there was telemarketers that would call. Oh. And so I always could identify a telemarketer because it ends in an A, they think you're a female. So they're like, "Hi, is Mrs. Sylvania Harrod?" I was like, "No, she died like 10 minutes ago. We're trying to figure out what we need to do with the body. Please don't call back anymore." And we do that constantly.
Oh my God.
And so you hear the pause, like, "Nope, she's dead. She had a heart attack." And so I thought this was like a callback to figure out what we do at this current moment. So I'm a little occupied. I gotta go. I would do it all the time. And to my friends who didn't know, they were always shocked. They're like, "Who was that just called you?" "Oh, it's a telemarketer. Don't worry about it."
Yeah, I can just imagine family dinner, no one's heard it before. And then it's like this nice, oh yeah, no, she just had a heart attack. Yeah. Do you know what to do with an 86-year-old body? No. Okay, thanks. Bye. Yeah. Everybody's just like stunned.
But the unique thing is you got to know who's sending the message. So they know it's me, and they know I like to joke around and do things. So they're just like, "Please tell me the rest of the story." So unless you're brand new and you're at your in-laws' house and they realize that on the first call, it's like, "Wow, what's happening?" So
this person is special. I love that. Oh my God, I love how just a mess up got this great story. About before we even started, like this, I love this episode already. But yes, let's hear. Why did you become an entrepreneur? Let's just jump into it. What was it about the world of entrepreneurship that brought you into it?
If I had to label it down to one word, I would say freedom. So there was always this allure of. So let's back it up a little bit. So like when I was a kid, it was always interesting because I was always a tinkerer. I was always a square peg in a round hole. So like I remember like being in grade school and teachers would ask certain questions and I'm like, "No, and I would be willing to challenge teachers because that was just kind of the mentality. And so since I was a young kid, my parents used to say like, my mom worked as a legal secretary growing up. So I would go in law firms and I would just walk into these attorneys' offices, like big law firms in New York on Wall Street. And you have this 7-year-old kid who just walks into your office. If your door is open, that means I can come in. So it's like, I would sit there and be like, "What is it that you do?" They're like, "Oh, I'm an attorney." "Obviously. What kind of attorney are you?"
You're in this big office. I'm pretty sure you're an attorney or a lawyer.
It would always catch them off guard because they're like, "Did the 7-year-old kid just say?" "Well, obviously." Like, "What kind of lawyer are you?" And then before you know it, my mom would be like, "Where'd my son go?" And she'd walk around. And I've been in their conference room questioning them for an hour, like getting questions, being curious, asking them in different moments. And so there's nothing greater as a person who pretends to be an adult working in an office building and seeing a young kid coming in and is interested in what you're doing and has the ability to hold a conversation and be able to do things. So for me, I always loved that element. I always loved I've naturally been a creative. So it was like creating your own things, having your own stuff. And then I was able to see this little small analogy of like, we went to, so on the summer houses and the summer activities, we would go to some of the partners' office, like homes, like beach houses. And so they had the big homes and the big things. And I'm like, well, what do they do that's different? Because this isn't what my house looks like. So this is not the neighborhood that I'm in. And so what are they doing that I'm not doing today? And I've always had this like mentality of like reverse engineering your desires. So as a kid, I remember being at the bus stop, and me and my buddies joke about this all the time. We call him the old rich white guy, because like they come in and Sometimes they're taking their kids to the bus stop and they're wearing basketball shorts and t-shirts. Other times they're wearing suits, but like they get to go on the field trips, they do other things. And I'm like, my parents work opposite shifts. They're working really long hours and have to do overtime and all this. And this dude's at the field trip with us. So I don't know what he's doing, but I want to do that. And that's kind of the genesis of what I ended up acquiring over multiple different phases of my life.
I love that. I love that. Like from youth, like I want to do where I get the big beach house and I get to go on
Yes.
the field trips with my kids because
Mhm.
that's all I want, right? I love
All I
that. I love
want.
that being the genesis of it. What was your first entrepreneurial venture, if you don't mind me asking?
So I would say if I'm going to go child or adult.
Let's say child, and then we'll do your first child and your first adult. Let's do that.
Okay. So first child was I would sell mixtapes in school. So this is back in the day where like you went ahead and you gave your computer aids by downloading BearShare or LimeWire. Napster never worked, but you're just like, I'm willing to bet the entire farm because I need to make this mix CD. And I remember being a techie and being like, hey, I got a mix CD. No longer am I sitting there on the radio where I started with making tapes. And I would have tapes to record the favorite songs, and then I would make copies of those tapes to go ahead and sell it to my friends. But like I wanted to be, I realized mixtapes were more efficient. So it's like, now I can get more and I can hand out these different CDs. I saw them at barbershops, different things that go there. And it's like, I can create my own mixes. It's like kind of like what is a modern day DJ now.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's where I first started as a kid was doing those type of activities. Cause I always realized like I just had this natural inclination of scale. So went through that. And then as an adult, I would say my first foray into entrepreneurship was network marketing.
Okay.
So I can't remember the name of the company now. The gentleman's name, so I was in the military and his name was O'Shane Cross. Haven't thought about his name in years until this current moment. So thanks for the question.
You're welcome.
So Sergeant O'Cross was just like, he just thought different. And it thought like I thought, because I always knew, like, no matter where I was at in the phase of life, I always knew like the big beach house and being with the kids was the desire. And it didn't matter if I did it in my 40s or 50s or any, like, I just knew like that was going to be the destination I was going to get eventually. So he had me read this book called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. And I read it, and I just remember like started the voracious reading and process to go there. So I was like, oh, in that book, they talk about like your JOB isn't going to give you the option unless you're in certain careers, which are like sales, to be able to be there. But you have to create something and do. And so naturally, what does network marketing do? They like create their own problem. They create the problem and they're the solution. So it's like, hey, as this is occurring, I went through that process, and that was when I learned I don't like selling something to people that doesn't really benefit them
Mhm.
in the
I
long
get it.
term.
No, I get it.
So that created a different process, and then I've transitioned from there when I got out of the military to where I got into insurance and started my own insurance agency. So I was like, what's a gooder service that people actually use that they will be able to be there? I still can take some of this process and concepts and person development and automobile university. And so I think it was 21, 22. I was just thinking, like, what year was that? I think it was 2008. So right 22nd, 22, 23 is when I started an insurance agency, and that began spanning things to where I realized, man, the digital world is much simpler, because at that time, these guys were just so used to, so because I'm a square peg, I'm always like, whatever path people are going, I'm going to spend time looking at that. And then I'm going to say, there has to be another way. And I'm just wired that way to like, no matter what. And that's what kind of why I didn't succeed in network marketing. Cause it's like, this is a process. You just follow the process.
Mhm.
But I'm like, but maybe I don't want to do the process. But
Maybe
when I
there's a
got into
better way.
there's got to be a more efficient way, because I have no desire to want to work 70, 80 hours a week. That's why I'm not in retail. That's why I'm not in the restaurant business. No, I have no desire to do that. I want to build something that is not reliant on my time. And then eventually it can be multiplied from that time. And that's what the whole process created for me, like the secret of the millionaire mind. He was talking about those kind of stuff. So I realized at that moment that there were these, like, it was before social media like became prevalent. It was
Mhm.
more of these forums. So I just started searching for forums. So as I'm searching for forums, finding out these things, I find out that there's guys that sell insurance over the phone in multiple states. And I'm like, I found it. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I said, I knew this has to exist somewhere. So that's when I got into the business of like getting leads, and I was able to condense my sales schedule into a 4-hour block because I realized that, hey, most people that are buying these insurance policies are married. Married people, if you're going to call them earlier in the day, you're probably getting the spouse. So what are they going to want? I want you to call me back when my spouse is home. I got to talk to them. Well, if I
Mhm.
can get both the spouse and the wife together at the same time when I call them, then now I've tripled my closing rate. So at that current period of time, I'm like, all right, this is what I'm doing. And I would just sit there. Then I found out about this thing called auto dialers. Man, it changed the game. I was like, you got people that will call these leads for me on the front end, and they just take this is a little bit more. And then all it was is I got to the point where I was just picking up the phone. I sat there. I'd be able to hang out with my kid at the time, be able to like get dinner situated, and then when the phone rang, that meant a lead was ready. They were willing to talk, and I would just walk over, put the headset on, be able to go through there. So that's a long-winded way of like landing the plane of like insurance sales is what the first thing, but my first digital experience was through there because I realized that there are other people that have a zone of genius that they want to be in. I knew I wasn't going to follow up. I knew I wasn't going to do multiple calls to get to the right person unless it was a big deal because these were low cost leads. I just realized if I can get 100 of these over the course of the month, I can work in this small window and then I can have the rest of my life to do it. I can work from anywhere, which was always a desire was time freedom, location freedom, and financial freedom is what I call my wealth formula over health, making sure your health's good.
I love
So,
that.
yeah.
I love it. Just freedom in general, and then you burn it down. You just knock them one at a time out until
Mhm.
you got that freedom. I love that.
Yeah.
So now you still doing the insurance, I presume, correct?
No, not at all, man.
Oh, where are we at today? What are we doing
Okay,
today?
so after the insurance thing ran its course for a period of time. Health insurance really got disrupted post Obama getting elected because
Mhm.
people had this perception that healthcare was going to be free, different things. So that meant that insurance companies had to change where they didn't have pre-existing conditions. Like, so because of that, they changed the commission structure. It's like, well, I got to work 10 to 15 times as hard to make the same amount of money I did there. So I actually ended up like just testing out multiple different facets that led to today. So I ended up working in enterprise software sales because I realized I was like, hey, I got a skill set, but who are these guys? I remember being at a gym and seeing these guys drive nice cars, and they would come in during their lunch breaks, kind of fit the image of what I saw with the old rich white guy as a kid. And I said, all right, what are these guys doing? So they're like, oh, we're in technology sales. Tech is only going to grow over the next 20 years. We help broker the conversations between like companies and technology firms. I was like, that sounds pretty cool. So I went through that route. I did that for I still do that today because it's fun and it's exciting. But so I looked at it as like, hey, I like the marriage between you have one person on one side of the fence, you have one person on the other side of the fence. And so, how can I bridge the gap between there and connection points? Because if I'm in this space where, let's say, for example, so one group of audience I talk to are SaaS founders, because I realized that SaaS founders, the biggest things that stop SaaS founders from getting to the promised land, which is called the exit, is typically sales and marketing and having
Mhm.
access to audiences. On this side, I looked at it and said, all right, well, who has access to these audiences? And I'm like, oh, well, it's typically influencers in some type of way, whether they are coach, course creator, speaker, etc. Like they have an audience that's engaged and be able to be there. So if I can broker those conversations between the two, there's a couple big wins. There's the win on the element of like this person has an asset. So most people don't know, but like the exit is the best part of business. That's where
Mhm.
true wealth is built. That's where true opportunity is built. Is all in the exit. But the problem is nobody's really going to tell you those things. They're going to tell you about like, oh, I had a 7-figure launch, or I had these type of things to be able to be there. They're never going to share what their profit was, what their profit breakdown, or how much they actually walked away with after that, or all the money they had to spend on ads to get to that point, and all the different things it took to get there. But it sounds super sexy because one day I can have that kind of element. When I realized that SaaS consistently has these type of exits, I said, yeah, that seems like a much more efficient path to wanting to be there. Well, what stops them from getting the larger multiple and the larger exit? Typically, they don't have a really good sales and marketing process. So I'm like, if I can find your ideal audience and bring them in, one, you're gonna give me a piece of the exit that happens to be there, and I'm gonna bring these individuals in so they can get a piece too. Because what I realized is that when a company is sold, the people who make the largest amount on when a company is sold is one of them happens to be the person who negotiates the deal. So I looked at it and said, well, I just got to be that person, because I'm as a person, as like, it's so much fun being an uncle versus being a parent. A parent is there when the kid's sick, when he's had a fight at school, when they're having doubts or different things. Uncle parachutes in. They're the coolest person in the world. You get them all jazzed up on candy and cookies and all kind of things. You take them to fun zone. You take them on trips, and then you send them back to their parents, and they handle all the other responsibilities. It's the same thing in that workflow of like, I do nothing but talk to software companies all day. I have for the last 16 years. I've worked in large software companies, billion-dollar software companies, had billion-dollar software companies as customers. And I also had companies that were in the single millions that happened to advise and work with. And I can tell you through the entire life cycle, we're different phase and what happens to be there. And it all boils down to their marketing. They bring in a different individual if they want to get from, or they bring in a different e-staff if they want to bring in a sales group that's going to take them from 50 to 150 million. Same thing. Like, it's the same. And so I just looked at it and was like, that's what I was doing anyway. So why don't I just jump in that world and tell you, like, this is the things that are happening. And so the beautiful thing that ends up occurring is that if they had constant access to distribution, they would never have to worry about a thing again. And all these coaches and speakers of the world, I kind of like really sunk my teeth in for a decade. They are building assets that can never be sold. So they're building these assets that can never be sold because it's a personal brand. So personal brands aren't worth anything. It's worth your name. So which even we're witnessing this today, like with Matthew McConaughey dropping a course. You got all these different influencers that are leveraging their audience to create an asset that then can be sold if they build a company and build structure and different things. Like we saw with, we watched Celebrity do it. Like, so we can look at like Ryan Reynolds. He drops in, parachutes in on Mint Mobile. His name of Ryan Reynolds cannot be sold, but his influence that he can do onto a business and build that, now he's building assets that can be sold. So I just looked at it and said, what's the most valuable asset you can be able to go get today? SaaS company. So it's a marriage between these two, where it's like, hey, if you look at like the M&A activity over the last 2 years, you had FinServ was a period of time because of crypto was going crazy, but most of the FinServ that happened to be there was software companies. If you look at, and then SaaS happens to be there. And then the other thing that hit me one day was when I was like, who's the top 10 richest people in the world today? And you look at it and you take out Bernard Arnault, you take out Warren Buffett, 80% for a good period of time is going to be people in software, some form or fashion. Tesla's a software company.
Microsoft, biggest example.
Exactly. Microsoft. Why is Tesla valued so high, right? Yeah. Why is Tesla valued so high? It's not because of their cars. No, it's because it's a software company that makes cars. So all of those, I just looked at it and said, all right, who's the audience of people I really like hanging out with? Who's the audience of people I really know? And so that's the path of being like, all right, I'm going to create a marriage between those two avenues. And now people have the opportunity to get pieces of that exit by leveraging. Fun fact, it just happened in America. You look at Donald Trump. Why did Donald Trump's worth just double in the last week? what he did, there's when I got more into like the finance world, I realized I was like, man, there's so much shell games being able to be
Mhm.
there. So there was this company called the digital, I want to call it like the Digital World Acquisition Company. Basically, it's a shell company. There's a process called a SPAC where you can create a shell company, you get investors to put money into it. It's a public way of raising funds, and then you take that money and you go acquire a company. You have a 2-year period of time, it's protected, there's a lot of red tape. But what they did was Donald Trump had Donald Trump Media. So what he did was they did this process utilizing a SPAC as a reverse merger to bring in that company. So this company had money that it raised from investors and publicly traded and purchased this company. And so they purchased it. Once that process was finalized last week, they went to market. He immediately, the day it launched, added $4 billion to his portfolio.
Jesus, Murphy.
For why? Because of they know the Donald Trump effect is going to happen. They know that he has a raving fan base of individuals that at any moment will buy whatever thing he loses. He goes out, he says, guess what? I'm going to create the Donald Trump shoes. Sells out in seconds. I'm going to create shirts. I'm going to create hats. I'm going to create all these things, and people go crazy. There's people creating credit cards based upon
Donald
Donald
Trump.
Trump.
Yeah, there's the you had the NFTs, you had the crypto
Yes,
coin, you
yes,
had the Trump bucks, which were
yes,
vanity, and people thought they were actual currency. Like,
yes.
it's just putting your name on something, and if you have a like Donald Trump has a very, very rabid fan base, bordering
Mhm.
on like apostle, like, if
Yeah,
you will, Jesus style, and they
yeah,
they they will buy nearly anything he has. And it's so true, and
yeah,
it's just the name recognition. Same with, like, I'm pretty sure Alex Hormozy in the
yes.
business world, like, he puts his name on. He just did it with school, and like, it probably, I don't know the numbers yet, but I wouldn't be
Mhm.
surprised if the valuation of that business just quadrupled, just being
Exactly.
tagged to Hormozy.
Exactly, because the thing that ends up happening, so you can look at it there. I'll go a few years back. Brendan Bouchard and Kajabi. Brendan Bouchard, once the moment he realized he could not be able to like really sell his asset, that is his name, because his name is labeled on all those different companies. What he ended up doing is he realizes, like, I do courses and this kind of stuff. I'm going to get a percentage of Kajabi, and I'm going to drive traffic. I'm going to drive influence. I'm going to drive revenue about Kajabi. Kajabi all day long is what he talked about. And then when they got their multi-billion-dollar valuation and got their monies when they raised funds, guess who got a good percentage of it? Brendan Bouchard. Because you look at it and it's collapsing time. So for him, his business is doing $5 million a year to be able to be there. So what if you could make 20 years worth of income in one? It's only possible through exits. So he's able to, they get $1 billion valuation, he's 10%. It's $100 million, boom, right there, that he
Mhm.
has access to. And then he has the ability to take loans out against that, buy other assets, like they can start playing that different game. And once I realized that, I'm like, yeah, you have to find ways to utilize your audience and influence to be able to get equity.
I love it.
So it's just there, and that's the game that I'm choosing to play. It's the game that's a lot more fun, because like when you get to sit there and be like, hey, yeah, I went ahead and I'm going to get the opportunity to raise your valuation by another 1 to 2 mil just because of the customer base that I already have. I'm all for it. Like the thing that I found fascinating, about high level right now,
Mhm.
people are like, oh, I built a SaaS company. No, you didn't, bro. Because the thing is, you read the terms and conditions. Who owns those customers?
I
How are you
love
going to go sell that product? You go to a PE firm today. Say, look, I have a high level, like I built this thing on top of high level to be able to go there, and I want to be able to go sell it. And they're going to look at you and be like, you're not getting a 4, 5, 10x multiple on your thing. Congratulations. You know who will? High level. They're going to walk away, and they're going to be able to have it there on their platform, and they're going to walk. You raise their valuation because you brought 8,000, 9,000 customers to their platform. ClickFunnels gets all big and bad, and they're giving you your dream car. Russell Brunson's walking away with the
when he sells it, he's walking away with a very nice check.
Thank you. I bought another jet while you go ahead and drive your Tesla Model 3.
Yeah, it's funny because if you look at it, technically all these businesses are network marketing.
Yes.
But on it, they're not just selling products that people may not need. We'll say, like, like Amway here or Tupperware companies, like people don't really need another Tupperware. But if you go to a business and say, hey, I can set up a funnel for you that will just drive traffic to you, and you only have to pay $65 a month, let's just say.
Yes.
Most businesses are going to be like, yes, I don't have to go out and get people to come in. Yes. And it's all you're doing is your network marketing, and it's just learning about people. Apparently all businesses is a pyramid scheme in different dresses, if you will.
It's fascinating though, because you go and you sit back, and it wasn't until I'm getting the rooms with these, like, I wasn't really indoctrinated into PE until the last 2 years. And then I'm going and I'm like, okay, tell me what you do again. Because I was familiar with real estate investing because we hear about that and people are talking about that. But I'm like, okay. And then Tony Robbins came out and he says, yeah, people that are like way higher millionaires than you can fathom, billionaires keep 49% of their assets in private equity and private capital. I'm like, but we're doing the other thing. Why aren't we doing what you're doing?
Why are we doing what the rich are doing?
Exactly. Like, so I looked at that and said, yeah, I'd much rather play that game and be able to go there. And you just look at that process and go through it. And it's a much more advanced, and it's intentional, like, because they don't want to, they want to keep people out, and they use all confusing terms. But I had I have friends that do it, and you just get access in the rooms, and then you start having conversations, and you go, oh, this is what you do, man. That's not that complex. Everybody
just use bigger words.
You just use fancier words. What does that word mean in English? Like, if you were to explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, and then you go like, what we do is we buy companies that we know have growth potential. We then take them, implement our systems and structures, because we do this constantly. We make it more efficient, then we sell it in 3 years. Oh, cool. And they're like, yeah, and most of the time we can buy them without using any dollars out of pocket. What?
Because it's future. You're buying them on future growth.
You're buying it on future growth to be able to be there. So like, you can tie in, depends on if the person's absentee, things be able to struck. And I just looked at all those and I said, yeah, that's a much more fun game to play than
it sounds even more. It's like a high stake poker game, but everybody wins at the end. No, the house doesn't win. It's everyone wins if you make the deal go through. And I love that.
Exactly. Because I look at it like the problem I did have with traditional private equity is there was a winner and there was a loser. And so being a sports guy like I am, like, I understand that there's definitely winners and losers, but what if there's a way where pretty much everybody wins at a different scale, but everybody's winning. Yeah. Like, nobody's walking away feeling like, man, I got totally slighted. That's nirvana for me. It's that, like, everybody wins.
I love that. It's my personal thing. How can we make sure that everybody wins and everybody is happy and everything works the way we want? What is the name of your company? Like, we've talked about your company. We haven't even mentioned the name of the company. Yeah.
So the one company that I created was called Leverage. So LVRG is one of the one. The one that, so I just started, I'm one that just starts moving and I just start doing things.
I start building things.
I literally didn't even name it. It was just like, hey, this is underneath the Leverage umbrella. It's going to be its own group to be able to be there. And so I've been testing out different names. So as I've been going through, what I've been doing is, like, I just do different interviews. And once I find out stuff, because we've already structured. So in the last, I started this process. I really opened my eyes in October. I started this process now that it's currently March 24. I started this process in December. And so since December, I've gone through the process of acquiring 9 companies with $0 out of pocket. 9. $0 out of pocket to be able to be there, all because I had an audience. So because I have an audience, they're willing to give me equity in their firms to be able to go through there. And the unique thing that ends up happening is, so for example, I have a software development firm. So software development firm, what do they naturally need? They're going to need they're going to need bodies. They're going to need different people to be able to go there. When you launch a software, what do you need? You need customer service.
Mm.
So guess what I have now? I have a VA firm, because the VA firm is going to need, so one company is paying the other company to be able to utilize services to make it more efficient, right? Then you go and you say, hey, guess what do you need? Oh, you need marketing? Oh yeah, I got that for you. Don't worry about that. So I have marketing firms that have. So you start looking at these different pieces and you say, hey, because guess what? I can go to a marketing firm and be like, what do you need more than anything else? You need customers. What if I have a way to be able to consistently give you customers on autopilot? And they go, all right, what's the word? I was like, cool, give me a day. And then I go to, so, hey, what do you guys need? We need this. Great. Here's what it is. Here's how it's structured. And you get my rate because I have equity in the company. Same thing happens when it comes to, I just did this conversation yesterday around what do we all need? Accounting. We all need accounting at some point in time, but we need creative accounting strategies. So I go to them and say, how many customers can you maximum support? And they go, well, probably 100. How many you have today? 20. I'm going to bring you 80. I'm going to create some. I'm going to have 80 to be able to be there. Can you support that? Sure. So guess what I do? I just go in, turn the spigot. Now there's going to be 80 customers coming in the door because I already had them as an audience.
Yeah.
So
you had them in the lead company or the marketing company. They're all there.
Exactly. You're all going to need them. So you're going to get customers immediately. It's just like, once I've realized that spigot is a matter of like, it's like, I wanted to call it. So I was thinking as I'm talking to you, I was listening to something. I'm like, it's like influence to equity, like I2E. Like, it's just like, hey, you have influence. Let's show you how to get equity. It's the same thing. And all you're doing is like leveraging your influence to gain equity on different items. It's the same thing that we look at it. That's what celebrities do.
Mm-hmm. It's like what Ryan Reynolds did. He built a marketing company first, and then he just uses that company to help market the companies that he's attached to, that he has equity in. And the marketing company is like, we only work for Ryan Reynolds and the companies he works with.
Exactly. If you think about it, like, why did all these, like, when they think about movie stars, people naturally think about movie stars. It's like, the studio cuts them a check for X amount of dollars. Nope. They have a production company. So guess who's on set with them? Who may be doing makeup design? Who may be doing this? Like, I'm a football guy. So you just look at, like, people don't realize, oh, when you see why does Peyton Manning not want to do Monday Night Football? Because Peyton Manning owns a production company. Is Monday Night Football going to hire his production company to be able to do things? Mm-hmm. As if he's the main person? Nope. What are they going to do? They're going to be able to hire him to do on a couple nights of Monday Night Football to be able to do things. And he'll make way more doing that than other things because he owns the distribution.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's owning a full channel.
He owns the full channel to be able to be there. And so you're like, hey, this company is going to rent to this company. This company is going to do these other companies. All the big players, that's what they do. They have these different assets, and you're relying on their level of influence to go in and do it. So it's like, oh, video editing company. Yep, got that too. Like, why? Because I'm going to be doing videos. So like, after you do this one, I'm going to be able to cut it and then the marketing company is going to get paid to go ahead and promote it on these different channels to go through this process.
I love it.
It's the same thing. Like, so you have these, you find these different elements, you bring them together. And so I know I can walk into any SaaS company today and be like, I know I can lower your costs. So I'm going to lower the cost on what you're already spending money on, as long as you guys already have current customers. And I have access to the distribution channels. So if you're going to give me this percent, because you know I'm going to go and you're going to get customers like turning on a spigot as long as I get equity. And I'm going to introduce you to people who also want a piece, and we're going to multiply this because the reach is ridiculous. So it's kind of like influencer marketing, but in a completely different mannerism.
It's influence marketing with businesses. That's what you're doing. Because you're not doing an individual, you're doing it on a business. And that business you're using that business's influence. So which can be greater, and it's an asset that can be sold. A business can be sold.
Versus can be sold.
Feel Better, the podcast mogul, that can't be sold. But the podcast launch agency, that can be sold.
Exactly.
I love it.
So like that whole process is developed because now you have sphere of influence. Now you can be able to leverage that. The other crazy part that people don't realize is they can do. So I talked to another person. They help occupational therapists. I told them, I said, occupational therapists are good at doing what? Being occupational therapists. What are occupational therapists not good at?
Everything else.
Anything else.
Everything else other than this one thing.
That one thing. They're mechanics. Like they are tinkerers, they are mechanics. They're like, I'm going to do this kind of stuff. So I said, if you were able to align the whole business part for them that you already had set up and structured for them, they would give you equity in their company. Now you're invested. So you're still going to make the same monies that they're paying you maybe once per year. But now you can, if they ever decide to go sell that OT agency, but realize that like, there's no committed contracts, there's no other things there, you're going to help them raise the multiples they can be able to get, because now people are buying, they have a management firm that's already managing all these things. So me, if I want to invest into that company as a PE, if the person wanted to stay on and they just wanted to have more capital, PE firm's going to look at it like, you got a management firm, you got all the different operations done, you're running at this kind of rate. Yeah, I'm willing to throw money at that thing because I know I'm going to get an immediate return. Versus the person who's running it all by themselves, their financials are crap. They're like, they don't have any of that stuff. So when I look at those things, I just look big and then realize on the micro how to simplify it.
I love
that.
I love that. I want to. We're coming to the end, which I hate, but I'm having a great time learning, like more than I ever thought I would learn in a podcast interview about a different domain that I never knew anything about, which I love. Again, Sylvania, we're gonna hit with the last question of the show. I have your 10-year-old self here.
Yes.
Spitfire, still looking at those rich old white men, wondering what they're doing.
Yeah.
What's one piece of advice you would love to be able to hand back to your 10-year-old self?
I'd say trust yourself. Trust yourself. Like there are going to be natural inclinations that you have as a child that were given to you as a gift. You may see it because it doesn't fit into the common mold of what you're seeing on a daily basis. You may see it as like weird or different. Lean into that, because that gift, you can't see it at the moment, but one day you'll wake up and recognize it and be like, it all makes sense now. So that's why I say hindsight is 20/20. So trust in what you're seeing, trust in the things that awaken your heart today, and just lean into those more.
I love it. That's some great advice for 10-year-olds worldwide, not just yourself, but worldwide. I'm going to jump off stage, Sylvania. I want you to tell my audience, because I know I probably have a few SaaS founders that are probably struggling for bits, or people looking to connect with you. So just let them know how they can connect with you and how they can work with you if they're interested.
Absolutely. So the easiest way to get a hold of me is if you'll see on Instagram, I'm at Sylvania Harrod. On Facebook, I'm Sylvania Harrod. Make sure it's the one with a picture of me and my family and not the chess piece, because that's my dad. You can reach out via DM. The code word is pineapples. Just send the word pineapples on there, and I'll know that you've listened to this messaging, and I look forward to helping and supporting. And anything I can do for you, I'm here for you.
I love that. First of all, I love the code word pineapples. I'm going to make sure that it's in the show notes with the little icon of a pineapple.
Absolutely.
Sylvania, I can't thank you enough. It's been a pleasure chatting with you and learning about this amazing business that I had no idea about.
Well, I'm glad, man, to be able to help. Look forward to when this comes out, pushing it to my audience and making sure that I can raise the bar on when it comes to the Invest in Yourself podcast.
Oh, I love that. I love that. To my audience, again, make sure you check out the show notes down below. Remember, when you DM Sylvania, it's pineapple. The keyword is pineapple. That's very important so that he knows you've been listening to the podcast. And as always, remember to invest in yourself.